of Pro Wrestling Review. I'm Randy Dieter from the Tribune Review.
I'm Brian Krause from the Daily News, and I couldn't have said it better myself.
And if you can get gas for less than 95 cents a gallon, talk to us. I'm Tom Combetti.
Really? 95 cents?
Yeah, 95 cents. The whole way on 30.
Wow. That's the truth.
Except the
Mine's
places that
99.
suck, like
Mine's
Texaco.
99.
Route 30 is like 1965.
You ever notice Texaco, even it could be 95 everywhere, Texaco's still like 250 because it's full service.
That's true.
And they change your tires.
Yeah, mark them off the advertising list. Who are you?
Oh, I'm Jim DeBruzzo. Thanks for joining us this week.
Freshly reinstated.
That's right.
Yeah, welcome back.
I was only suspended for 4 segments. So.
And speaking of welcome back, the WWF welcomed back 2 guys this past week on Raw. We're going to get into a little bit of that later on with our Raw report.
Yep.
And the WWF also had the biggest pay-per-view of all time this month, Survivor Series, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we also have an interesting debate topic. We're going to talk a little bit, and this has to do with Survivor Series, whether or not the Big Show deserved to be in the match as part of Team WWF. So,
Yeah, you get to guess which side I'm taking.
I'm afraid to be sitting in between you two.
well,
Should be a lively debate.
we'll keep it clean, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Brian, you have an announcement to make, though, real quick. Before
Yes,
we go
I
out
do
of
have.
here.
I have an announcement to make. If you would look over at Tom Combetti over here on my immediate, well, that's just me, but on my immediate right, there he is. He's sporting the Motley Crue T-shirt. And actually, what Tom is doing is he is previewing next week's Pro Wrestling Review show, where on this broadcast it will be Heavy Metal T-shirt week. So I know that's going to infuriate all you purists out there, but tune in anyway, because we're all going to have. Jim's wearing his Celtic Frost shirt. I'm really looking forward to that.
I thought he was wearing his triple threat Chris Candido Bam Bam Bigelow shirt.
Well, no, that was before he misunderstood with the whole idea of Heavy Metal T-shirt.
Actually, Mr. Dickinson insisted on Hip Hop Shirt Week, but we shot him down.
I have a
drastically
Mr.
on
Big jersey at home. I would like to
Who?
know that. Mr. Big.
How the hell do you not know who Mr. Big is?
I don't know.
I'm only kidding, man.
Oh.
I'm only kidding.
Boy,
Wow.
you're almost banned again.
All right, well, we're in black and white, so we're going to come back and we're going to start the show. So, see ya. Before we get to the main event, the 10-man tag, maybe we could talk a little bit about the 2 unification matches that were on the show. Test against Edge and the Dudleys against the Hardys for the millionth time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought both matches were fine. I had nothing spectacular out of either one of them.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the thing I did like about the matches, and this is the problem I've had with a lot of the title matches over the last 2 years, is both matches, all the competitors actually seemed like they had a sense of desperation when they were trying to win the matches. Test Edge was very mediocre up until the last, 2-3 minutes of the match, when they were both hitting moves that generally would put a guy away on a Raw or whatever, for the Intercontinental title. But instead, these guys were kicking out and making it seem like they were doing everything in their power to keep the match going so that they could win the title. And the thing with Jeff Hardy, it was just very simple booking at the end of that match. It just made that great, because when Matt Hardy turns heel, which actually I think he should have done at Survivor Series, it's going to have so much logic behind it. It was just a good move, and it was one of those things where the Dudleys shouldn't have been champions, but they are, because Jeff Hardy got stupid. And I thought the match was pretty good.
Well, talking about the unification U.S. title, IC title match, if you would have came to, me or anybody on this show for that matter, 10, 15 years ago and said, you're going to see unification match, the U.S. Intercontinental title is unified, but who are the 2 guys? If you would have told me a Test or an Edge, which Test, it's debatable. I know Jim over in Studio Z has mixed feelings on Test. Edge is up and coming, obviously, but to see Edge and Test fighting for both of these titles, the number 1 contenders to the world title in Test and Edge, well, when was the last time you saw Edge wrestle The Rock or Edge wrestle Austin? Likewise for Test. I don't know if they picked the right 2 guys here. I mean, obviously you're going to build with this Edge having both unified titles, until he loses them to Crash Holly or Funaki on this week's SmackDown, which hasn't aired yet. But it was just, Heat, Jacked, whatever you want to call it. It just, I didn't think you'd see guys of that caliber wrestling for 2 of the second most important titles in any federation. Maybe like an Angle, a Jericho for that matter. I'm at a loss. I'm working through a stinger, I might add, by the way.
Well, that goes back again to, you look at guys like Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, and I know we harp on this sometimes, and not to take away from Survivor Series, which was a decent show. It's just the situation could have been, instead of having Test and Edge, which I don't care how many WCW shirts guys like Test wear, they're still going to be WWF wrestlers. You could have had a Lance Storm, you could have had a Mike Awesome, you could have had a, Diamond Dallas Page or Booker T or whoever. But the thing is, this was 2 WWF guys, one of which happened to be working for WCW at the time.
You had the same problem with the tag team title match. I mean, these were 2 teams we've seen, like you mentioned, wrestle a million times, And why does it make it any more special that they're fighting for the WCW and WWF tag team belts, two of the most storied, probably the most storied tag titles in the history of the business. It doesn't. It doesn't make it any more special, and that was really part of the problem. And I agree with you. I mean, Edge, I think, probably is, well, actually not probably. He's definitely a lot closer to being there than Test is. And I think the other thing with Edge that's a problem, and I think this sort of made the match maybe, probably wouldn't have made the match better, but maybe the whole ambience right around it better, is he cut like that smart alecky promo before he went out to fight Test. You know, you're going to fight for the second most important title in wrestling, and you're cutting a joking promo. Now, the next night on Raw, and I don't mean to jump to Raw, but when Kurt Angle confronted him, and he finally gave a serious promo. It was great. It was finally showing that edge that Edge needs to show. But I think he should have done that before this title match too. I think it would have made a big difference.
But as far as cutting serious promos go, last week on Raw we saw The Rock and Austin, two guys, one of which could have been out of business depending on the outcome of Survivor Series, singing a song, a duet,
Which is a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just don't see good interviews anymore unless they just sneak up on you, like an Edge interview from last night.
Well, you
Or
talk
from
about
Monday's
you
Raw.
talk about Test too, though. It's not. He didn't exactly give like an X-Pac style interview either. I mean, his you're missing the baby oil. I'm like, that gimmick it's been used so many times, and Test just doesn't have the right personality for it.
Yeah, I agree.
That's something more for Chris Canyon, but let's not harp on that.
That's right.
Well, some other matches on the card. The opening match, which was better than it should have ever been, between Al Snow and Christian. Just forgot how good of a worker Al Snow is before anybody drops dead from that comment I just made. But a really good opening match. I don't understand why they don't do more with Snow.
Well, here's the thing.
I hear snickering in Studio Z.
It was a good match, and it was an impromptu match that started on heat. But you look at the ovation that Al Snow got, and you realize what it means when you take a guy like Al Snow. They brought him in, they put him with the head gimmick, the same thing he did in ECW. Yeah, it was moderately entertaining when the WWF had it, and then they just turned it into this whole horrible thing. And you look and you see Tough Enough, and you watch Tough Enough, and you see someone like Al Snow, and they expose what he's about, his personality, how he felt, and the crowd reacts. And you saw that at Survivor Series.
Yeah, the other thing, just drawing on the Christian Al Snow match that I really liked, and this again goes back to building your titles if they were actually serious about this, is that you had Christian go up against Al Snow. Al Snow gave him a tough match. At times during the match, it looked like he could lose the title. But in the end, he ended up winning, retaining the belt, and therefore, living to see another day as champion. There's nothing wrong with doing that on a weekly basis. I mean, it doesn't kill Al Snow. I mean, not more than they have already done to him. But, you could have brought Al Snow out this past week on Raw and have him fight a match against somebody, and it wouldn't have made a big difference. People wouldn't have looked at him saying, oh, he lost that title match. And I think it's almost like the WWF's afraid that if they get a guy that they want to push in that level, like how many times has Rhino had belts, and Tajiri's already held the U.S. title and all that kind of stuff. It's like they're afraid that they have to give those guys the belts in order to keep them at that level, and then they never end up keeping them there anyway. So why don't we actually pick who we want to start elevating in the future, like Edge, perfect choice, and keep the belt on him for about 5-6 months. Let him establish that Intercontinental title, let him establish that division and who is entailed in that division. And then we won't be able to talk. We won't be talking about how these belts are such a problem a year from now.
Well, it's again, when you have someone like Christian or an Edge, sometimes the WWF feels the need to have these guys face each other all the time instead of like having an Al Snow come in and try to get the title. But we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about this past Sunday's pay-per-view. So stay with us.
In Pennsylvania, and we were talking about Survivor Series, so I think we're probably going to do a little bit more of that right now. We have we probably won't have much to say about this six-pack challenge. Let me just say that I think Jazz looks like Jimmy Snuka.
I think that's an insult to Jimmy Snuka.
It is. But
well, let's get the opinion from the person on this panel who truly enjoys women's wrestling for what it is.
Oh, no.
And I'm not talking about that book.
You're talking about Kurt Angle?
No.
It was a joke.
Did you expect anything less?
At some point, I said during the show, man, I wish Francine was involved in this because at least she could bump better than anyone that was in that match.
And let me point out, I almost threw Jim out of my living room when he said that. So I just want to.
But the fact is, she at least works harder.
It's not a whopper on a pole match, Francine doesn't need to be in it.
No, I mean I honestly believe that. I think Francine actually has a little more dedication and work ethic than Lita or
You let him stay after this crap?
Hey, he was paying for part of the show.
I didn't say she was good at it. I just said she works harder at it. And maybe if Lita and Trish actually worked hard at what they do, they could actually improve and maybe hit one of their moves correctly.
I will agree that I think Molly should have been in the match.
You're just overlooking this point completely, aren't you?
Well, here's another thing. You know, this
I
is
don't know.
another thing.
You're the one with the Aja Kong poster, not me.
There's another thing
You
that
deal
really
with your own
bothers me.
demons.
You still have the internet bias about ECW, that everything ECW is great and is infallible and all that. So, of course, when Jazz made a review, everybody on the internet saying, "Oh, what a great debut! Wow, it was Jazz." She didn't do anything.
Yeah, did you notice nobody knew who she was?
Yeah, and she looks like Jimmy Snuka.
Right.
So there was also, is that it? We just have the 10-man tag, right? I'm not missing anything before we move ahead. No, Regal and Tajiri.
Yeah, it was a match that was 3 minutes long and ended out of nowhere. The end.
There you go. So let's get into the 10-man tag match. And we won't really touch on so much about the Big Show because I know you guys are going to battle on the show later about this. But I don't think it was a surprise that it came down to Rock and Austin. I think everybody pretty much saw that one coming. But what do you? I mean, no, I thought they did. I thought they did a good job along the way. I thought it was nice that Jericho actually lasted to the third to the last guy. Something they needed to do.
Well, the one thing too is I was surprised that Shane McMahon went out so early because you know how
Yeah.
the McMahons sometimes have a tendency to book themselves in as one of the last guys. Even how stupid would it have been if The Rock and Shane McMahon would have been the last two? It's like
right.
and you could make a case where Shane should be one of the last ones, and this isn't me making the case.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Shane could be one of the last ones because it's his company he's fighting for, which is bogus because he's not a wrestler. He's a a crazy bump taker, if anything.
Right.
Well, I think the main problem with the whole situation is once they got to Rock Austin, I think they went too long with Rock Austin, and really took away from what the other men in this match did. Because like halfway through Rock Austin, you're thinking to yourself, well, this could have been a singles match, and they could have achieved the same effect.
I don't think so.
Well,
I thought, you know what? Yeah, I thought it was good.
I mean, in hindsight, over what happened on Raw and the events of that, I mean, it kind of in hindsight, it's like, well, okay, it all makes sense now. But
Right, and
still,
I think that's the point.
I mean, well, yeah, that is the point. But you still have 8 other guys in there. What was the point of Booker T being in that match?
Well, I
or
think
Big Show
that's the
or
point we've been making all
Undertaker
along,
Kane.
though, Jim. But it was still a 5-on-5 tag match, and sure, there was going to be something that was going to happen in that match that was going to take away from everything else. It would have come down to Jericho Austin, and Jericho would have pinned Austin. That would have taken
Okay,
away
let
from
me
the rest of
rephrase.
the
I think
match.
it took away from it, not in a good way.
I don't think it did at
Because
all.
if you're building this as a true Survivor Series battle, the last epic battle between these two factions, I think you got to build more drama as far as the pins go in the context of the entire match.
Well, but it also came down to the 2 top guys in each group. I mean, that I think shows you
you still
that.
could have done that and did the earlier match
Yeah.
different. I mean,
Are you saying it's predictable? Is that kind of what I mean?
to some degree, yeah.
I can understand that
yeah,
usually
it was
with Survivor Series, the importance of the pins are never really stressed. Guys just get beat, and then another guy will come in and he'll roll them up from behind.
Yeah, and
get pinned
I think
again.
that's what you had with this match. I mean, who
I could
remembers
agree
how
with that to a certain
Undertaker, Kane, and Booker T? I can't tell you right now how they got eliminated.
Well, see, that's part of where I'm going to disagree a little bit. Is I think that they did a better job with this match than they did in some of the Survivor Series matches in the past. Because you didn't just have in the past in the Survivor Series, you'd have like, for example, Kane would get pinned via frog splash, and Van Dam would be standing there, and all of a sudden, Booker T would run in and roll. Oh no, that couldn't happen. Undertaker would run in and roll him up and pin him, and it would be like 2 pins in 30 seconds. And they didn't do that this time. They actually gave you a little bit of time in between each pin to build to that next pinfall. And I think they did a much better job with that than they did in the past.
That said, though, I mean,
in context of the past, yes, I agree with that. But I don't know. It just a lot took away. The time they gave to Austin Rock took away from it, I think. And I think another thing, I want to throw this in real quick before Randy gets his point in. All through the show, you saw the intensity of the pins through every match. Not that Rock Austin did a bad job in that, but I think it was a less degree of intensity of desperation in that match that they had in the earlier matches, as far as the pinfall tips go. Agree or disagree?
I disagree, but I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this match.
yeah, the one thing I can think of is if you watch SmackDown, you saw the main event of the show was Austin versus Angle, or I'm sorry, not versus Angle, Austin and Angle versus Rock and Jericho, and that's what the Survivor Series came down to. So, in that sense, I would say that the Survivor Series match was a little predictable. That it came down to those the same 4 guys that were on SmackDown, 4 days earlier. So,
But-
yeah, see, I think that's okay, though, because I think what they did that's important is the right 4 guys finished, and those were the right 4 guys. The wrong 4 guys would have been Austin, Undertaker, Rock, and
that's true.
I don't know, somebody else.
Yeah.
But it's good that Jericho was there because and especially what they did with him the following night on Raw, because it proved that they're going to keep pushing him and that Jericho's still important. And I think that they could have easily taken the easy way out and have him gotten pinned like second on his team, but they didn't do that. He went to the end. He got pinned by the world champion. And I think that's a good sign.
It is good that Jericho stayed into that, but we always talk every week about how you got to keep guys important in the context of what they're doing, and I just don't think Undertaker, Kane, Booker T, for example, were that much important to this match in hindsight.
Well, I can agree. I actually agree that the fact that those guys weren't important, but I don't really care that the Undertaker or Kane was important in that match. As far as I'm concerned, those guys are tag team wrestlers. Booker T, that's a different story.
Yeah.
He is WCW.
Well, we can debate more, but we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Take us out.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to come back. Are we going to do the, well, I guess we're going to talk Ric Flair or something next.
We'll decide. It's going to be a surprise.
We'll be back. We don't even know what we're going to do, but that's no surprise. We'll be back after this.
Does Andre the Giant's son, The Big Show, have a place in the Survivor Series main event? The question I pose to these two gentlemen, well, Rennie and Jim. So take it away.
Well, thank you, Tom, for that. Well, Big Show got put into the main event at Survivor Series, and while I was overjoyed at the fact that Vince McMahon was taken out for obvious reasons, I don't think Big Show was the answer in any way, and I don't see what Big Show did or what his storyline involved him deserving this role in the main event as one of the top 10 guys in the whole story.
Well, I mean, and I said this a while back on the show that I think the Big Show will be main eventing again in 6 months. Of course, you scoffed at me, but
I still do.
That's understandable. I just think that in the last few months, though, with the Big Show, the way he's been presented and the way he's been, I guess you could say, protected, he's come out, he's looked like he's been enthused again. I don't like to say the fact that he.
Offstage bantering, I guess.
I don't know. But anyway, he looks like he's been excited about working again. I don't want to talk about the weight issue thing because that's such an irrelevant point. That this week he looks fat and this week he doesn't. But I think he's really been trying. So.
But for the sake of this topic, we'll probably disagree a little bit whether he's been trying or not. I just still think it's the same old Big Show. But let's look at the facts. Number one, he's not even on his best day ever one of the top 10 guys in this promotion. I'm talking, you pick his best day, his best performance, he's still not one of the top 10. Number two, yeah, I'll pretend like you were right overall, and
Thank you for pretending on my behalf.
Well, no, let's just say, yeah, he is improving, he is getting his weight under control, which I think is a little more important, but yeah, he is working hard, I'm not doubting that. But where in any of his storylines in the past, what's he been back for 6 months now? Has he been in the upper echelon of any show?
Well, I think they just took the former storyline that they had between he and Shane McMahon and brought that back to fruition. I don't think the thing is,
it was poorly told then.
Well, we made a case on the show that Diamond Dallas Page should have taken Shane McMahon's place. I think that would have been the right decision, seeing as how Page is still one of those WCW guys. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, as far as the Big Show is concerned, he's just. For the last few weeks, granted, he doesn't deserve a run at the world title, and you could make a case of whether or not he should have been in this match, but he's a guy that's identifiable, I guess, with the WWF up until this point, and he's also a guy you could have said...
Is he?
I think he has to be, at least for being there for the last 3 years. But my point is, he's also the guy that when he joined and Vince McMahon stepped away, he was the guy that you said maybe Big Show will jump to WCW and help the alliance. So he brought in that, because obviously it doesn't make sense for Vince McMahon to do it, so that's why I think the Big Show is added. He has a past, he has a lineage with WCW.
The problem with that is more than just the Big Show, though. The problem with that is, granted, I missed a few shows here and there in this time frame, but I didn't see any hint of that on any storyline leading up to this match, that the Big Show might turn or whatever. As far as identifying him with the WWF, I'm not convinced the fans are buying him right now. I mean, I don't see it in him.
It's one of those things, too, though. As much crap as the Big Show's been put through, he's still a guy who's 7 feet tall. He's still a guy that ranges anywhere between 350 and 800 pounds. So the thing of it is...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, a few weeks ago, or actually it might have been last week before SmackDown, before the pay-per-view, he came out and he took care of a bunch of Alliance guys. And that's what you kind of have to do with the Big Show. And I don't mean sacrifice guys like Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, but...
And
I still think he can be the giant killer that they want him to be, with a little tinge of humor.
I think he's lucky he's 7'2" and 400 pounds.
I agree with that.
I
think if he was,
we're not so far past the point where 6 months ago, if he wasn't 7'2", I think he would have been released.
I totally agree with that. If he was 6 feet tall and 240 pounds, he'd be back in groceries somewhere. I totally agree with that. But he happens to be that tall, like it's an accident. But he is.
But does it matter anymore to the fans?
I think with somebody like that, I just think with somebody like that, you can still work with something. I think the
But
trip to
the-
Ohio
the-
Valley Wrestling did him a lot of good.
I think it did too, but you don't work with something and don't try to mold something. You don't do it in the main event on what's supposed to be your biggest pay-per-view of the year, Alliance versus WWF. You can't experiment in that situation. And don't get me wrong, I think Big Show performed well in this match.
He did
I just-
enough. He wasn't going to be a breakout star.
Oh, exactly. But they put him away the way they should have as well. And I just don't think he deserved to be there. I don't
You talk
see.
about putting him away, though. They put him away the way you would put away somebody who was
Exactly.
a threat, who was
Exactly.
a giant. So then, in that case, I'd say he does belong
But
there.
but here's the thing.
Let me
though.
ask you a question. Who do you think should have been there instead of the Big Show, besides Vince
as
McMahon?
a better choice, or just somebody who
As
deserved
somebody
to be there?
who could actually have some credibility in a match of this magnitude? Who else is WWF going to put in there? I know Billy
Kurt
Gunn's
Angle.
free.
Well, right.
He's on the other team, Jim. I'm talking about
No,
somebody.
it doesn't matter. Kurt Angle should have been on that side.
Now you're starting to go back into the booking from
But that-
2 weeks ago.
But yeah, you have to look at it. Because another thing you have to look at the Big Show is with, okay, he's involved in this, I guess you can call it a story with William Regal. Why wasn't a Big Show Regal at Survivor Series? Why take away everything those guys did up to that point with Tajiri on the side? And I'm sorry, Tajiri and Regal didn't match up well at Survivor Series.
Well, I don't think we've ever seen a case where a cruiserweight matches up well with a heavyweight. But
Some
you still
case.
haven't answered my question, though. Who else on the WWF roster, and I'm talking WWF, I'm talking Billy Gunn, I'm talking about Crash Holly, Taka. Who else did you want to see?
If
There wasn't
we're ignoring
anybody
Kurt Angle,
else.
I would have to say Edge.
He's not. You can't. He's not a
But
main
nobody
eventer.
else is up that level. That's what I'm saying. You don't
That-
put anybody in this level at this point. Edge could have been there, but Big Show is even further back than Edge at this point.
Nah, Big Show is still going to have that. He's a big guy, and I'm not saying, I'm not apologizing for his size, but what I'm saying is he's just one of those guys that he's contended for world titles. He's won the world title. He's got to be the guy you pick. If he's the only if nothing else, then he's the only person that would be believable.
Then
Could you see Edge standing on the
They
sidelines?
should have decided this like 2 months ago and then make him a devastating force up the ladder.
Right. I'm not defending the WWF's
Well.
booking habits, but my point is the fact that I don't think you could have an Edge in there.
Perhaps.
But
I think our debate's over. Let us know what you think at home. I want to see are our fans buying into the Big Show? Write to us at ProWrestlingReview@lycos.com and tell us what you think. That's it for this segment. We'll be back.
And I just can't do it this week. I'm sorry to all my fans out there. So this is trivia. We hope you're still with us. And Rennie, read the.
Okay, I think I got most of that. Our producer's crawling on the floor. Okay, question number 1 for last week's trivia. The final match of the 1994 Survivor Series was The Undertaker against Yokozuna in a casket match where... I know, it was a funny match, let me tell you.
Well, the fact that Chuck Norris beat the hell out of everybody that came down to the... Was that
Yeah.
the right pay-per-view?
Yep, you're
Okay.
correct. And that's actually our winner this week said Chuck Norris, and so good for him. Question number 2. Kane's first Survivor Series match was against who? It was against Mankind. We can remember that match because the whole arena was red and no one knows why. Question number 3. Who interfered in The Undertaker and Hulk Hogan's match in the 1991 Survivor Series? The answer is, coincidence, Ric Flair. Some of you put Paul Bearer, but I was looking for Ric Flair as that answer, so you can hate me later. Question number 4 from last week's show.
Sure.
The first... Not you.
Sorry.
You hate me all the time.
Oh, that's true.
Question from last week's show from the 1987 Survivor Series. Name the 2 teams, Hulk Hogan's team and Andre the Giant's team. Hogan's team consisted of Hulk Hogan, Bam Bam Bigelow, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, The Rock, Don Morocco.
Yeah, The Rock was even born in '87.
All right, and Ken Patera, who you pointed out last week, threw a brick through McDonald's, which was a good trivia hint.
Well, they should serve breakfast all the time.
I agree. Those apple pies, 2 for $1. We can't beat that.
Hey, I want to get sick in the morning. I go to McDonald's.
Andre's team was Andre the Giant, of course. One Man Gang, King Kong Bundy, The Natural Butch Reed, and Ravishing Rick Rude.
What's so natural about him? His hair was yellow.
This
That
week,
was the point.
this week's winner is Cyndi Lauper's husband, David Wolf, who's residing in Oakville this week. So
Oh, that's great. David's
Brian.
local now.
tell him what he's won.
Well, David, you can hang these right up to all your gold platinum records. You win a gift certificate, or actually it's just a certificate, from Original Pizza Works in Dravosburg, Pennsylvania, for 1 large pie with 1 topping, an order of chicken wings, and a 2-liter bottle of carbonated beverage. And Jim, you have
Well.
something to say?
I can't top Tom, but I'll try. Well, if you want to play this weekend, really, why wouldn't you? After you click on ProWrestlingReview.com and click on Trivia, answer those 3 questions. The question this week is, name 4 different men Ric Flair defeated. Oddly enough, 4. Name 4 different men Ric Flair defeated to win a world title. talking NWA, WCW, WWF. Name 4 different men Ric Flair defeated to win a world title.
Maybe we should point out to some of our more creative fans, you cannot write the same person's name twice.
Yes.
Thus the point of me saying 4 different men.
Well, I just wanted to add to your point. See, we're
Thank
even
you.
agreeing.
Yeah.
Well, in the later years of WCW, Ric Flair could have possibly defeated himself for the title. We're not looking for those kind of answers. But answer the 3 on the website, as Jim told you. Answer this question, which you just heard 50 seconds ago. ProWrestlingReview.com or ProWrestlingReview@Lycos.com. Send us the answers. Name and address, please. And good luck.
We really got to run the tapes during these breaks. Well, as you saw at the top of the show, with the clip we showed, Ric Flair. Oh, that's right, we didn't because somebody forgot his Raw tape this week.
I brought my Coke.
Well,
Once again, Ken Patera was the hint for last week's trivia question.
Jim, what have you done?
I think a one cheap shot at a friend, and this is what happens. Well, how about it, guys? Woo indeed. Somebody save me.
Could that have been any more lifeless?
This feels like Raw.
Well,
Yeah.
we've been waiting ever since Flair, well, the original, the good WCW went
I
under
thought you
to
were saying
see.
the original Ric Flair.
Well, yeah, there's 6 of them. It's a clone Ric Flair we
Like
saw
the
last
Ultimate
night.
Warrior.
When did the good WCW go under, like 87?
I know.
Around that time. Anyway, we've been waiting since Time Warner, Eric Bischoff, Jason Hervey's WCW went down the tubes to see Ric Flair again, and we did this past Monday on
Can I say something?
Brain Freeze.
I'm sorry. No, you just said Eric Bischoff. I've got to say this thing. I'm sorry.
No,
Bob
go
Ryder on his internet column Tuesday morning, now Chris Jericho and his segment with Kane, good match. He just had a hard time locking on the whatever you call it, the walls of Jericho. Okay. Bob Ryder in a bullet point said, "I wonder if Chris Jericho is going to blame his poor performance on Raw and Eric Bischoff." Oh, they're married. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, did Bob Ryder get his lips away from Bischoff's ass long enough to write that?
I'm sorry.
We're actually deviating away from the point. And
We
that's
are. I'm
that,
sorry.
Ric
I'm very
Flair
sorry.
returned to the WWF this past week on Raw in the very last segment. As fans
Amazing
around
how
the
that
world on the
works.
internet were waiting for it. What's
I
that?
said amazing how that works.
Isn't it though? And in the first segment, we'll get to this first. In the first segment, Jerry Lawler came back.
I'd like to add this. You notice how Steve Austin is always late to the arena? Who gives him his freaking directions? Can he get a trustworthy rent-a-car from
I was
Rent-A-Car?
going to say, he got to the arena this week and his car didn't even pull up.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
He probably just ran in. Maybe Deborah was driving. Much like she bakes, I'm sure they can't find the arena on any given night anyway. That's why he's always late. But as you alluded to, we did see the return of Jerry Lawler. More importantly, or most importantly, we saw the return of Ric Flair, who, beyond words, hey, is the storyline for him coming back, a part owner of the WWF, who cares? Ric Flair's back. I'm happy.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that point up because I'm going to throw this question out. And we talked about it before we went on for the show today. Is it the Ric Flair coming back? If you sort through, the excitement and everything like that, let's analyze the storyline of him coming back. He bought stocks off of Shane and Stephanie, but according to what they said when ECW and WCW joined up, they relinquished all their WWF stocks. Now, did they sell them to Flair then?
I think that was the point.
Okay.
I thought they said
I know
that.
it sounds very cheesy to say,
I
but
actually thought Shane and Stephanie used the phrase, well, we sold all our stock and funded this whole alliance thing. I thought. At least I could be wrong.
It's just, Flair, as jubilant as he was last Monday. Oops, slapped my wrist. He didn't really explain that very well. All he did was say that he bought something, he bet on a winner.
Yeah.
And so it seemed to me like it came across, and this is picky, I know this is like Wade Keller picky, but I'm going to say it anyway. It came across like he just happened to buy the stocks from them on Sunday.
Well, I wonder if Ric Flair will blame this on Eric Bischoff.
I don't know.
Sorry. Yeah, there's I agree with you, but you also got to think of it this way too. Ric Flair coming back on Raw, making a return to the business that he probably loves more than his wife.
in his hometown, though.
In his hometown, I'm sure was so emotional. The point of why he was back, like Tom just alluded to, really wasn't that important. They sort of.
I agree.
They,
I can agree with that.
They
this
took
was
the
planned.
initial step.
I think there was a point here. I think the point is, and we discussed it, we'll have time later to discuss it more, Austin getting back over as a face, if he needed to get back over as a face.
I don't even think that was the point so much.
Well, I mean, I think it just happened to be coincidental. You're in Ric Flair's hometown, he's getting popped out of the building, and oh, by the way, he's helping Steve Austin get his belt back.
Yeah.
I think it all ties together.
See, I mean, you've got time at this point where
We do.
we've talked about before. You take your time telling a story. And I think this is one of those cases. At the time we're taping this, SmackDown hasn't aired, so the explanation could have come out further there as to what happened. And I think they probably will get a little bit more detailed. But ultimately, I think what this is going to end up doing is, of course, you bought the Survivor Series to see one promotion survive and one fall. You know, if you would have read our webpage, we told you that both of them were going to stick around. And I think this is how they're going to do it. If Ric Flair owns half of the WWF, an easy explanation could have been, well, Shane and Stephanie made that agreement, but I didn't, and I was actually the controlling interest, you know, and I say they're still around. I think Ric Flair becomes the figurehead of the alliance now and kind of keeps this storyline continuing until, of course, the debuts of Hall Nash, Scott Steiner, and whoever else comes
Well, it'd be
along.
interesting to see if Ric Flair comes out in story, of course, and says, well, WCW is mine, or whatever he wants to say. And I don't know if they'll be able to bring the name back or if they want to bring the name back.
Yeah.
But actually, I thought that was the direction Raw was going. Ric Flair was going to come out and say, you've done enough stomping on WCW where
I think that's
grew.
everybody pretty much thought.
Yeah,
when
and
they
it
heard
could still
Flair's
happen.
name.
Yeah, it could still happen.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
I'm not saying it should, but you never know.
I think it should.
Next pay-per-view is called Vengeance, so it's bound to be some vengeance.
Well, I'm not even sure if we can say at this point that the WWF could give Flair a proper send-off, because we saw on Monday perhaps the last appearance of this man in his gay book here.
Holy cow.
Oh, he wasn't fired, Tom. Come on.
Well, that's the last time we're ever
Ah,
going to
let
see
it
him.
go. That's all right.
Watching McMahon eat cheese, Mick Foley falls down the steps of the airplane. That's the last time we're going to see him. But the point is about Flair. Flair is perhaps, no, I'm going to go on record. He is the best wrestler of the past 25 years, the biggest wrestler. Screw Hogan. He needs a proper... Flair could wrestle good matches with anybody. Hogan could go 8 minutes and be blown up beyond all recognition, fall through the ropes, and end the match. Flair needs a proper send-off. And bringing him back to the WWF, I hope to God, is the right start for the WWF to say, this is the greatest wrestler of all time. Yeah, of all time. Let's give him the proper. Let's
Right.
give him his just due, and eventually, when he's ready to go, let's give him his proper send off.
Well, this is something I touched on my column, and it's the fact that, you know, with Ric Flair coming in, there's really no one else out there that they could have gotten that could have given them a second chance at this whole invasion angle. Flair is that guy, and now it's going to be up to the WWF on this second effort to make, if they choose to bring WCW in, and when they do, to make this seem important again, because this is it. There are no more Ric Flairs out there to bring in and say, okay, we get another shot at this. This is it.
Well, yeah, 2 points quickly then. To build on what Tom just said about sending Ric Flair out correctly, I think it's really telling, if that happens, that Ric Flair's going to get the proper send-off in a promotion that he didn't even build his legacy in. And, you know, for Bob Ryder taking shots at Chris Jericho, for taking shots at Eric Bischoff bent over and crapped all over Ric Flair's legacy, which was wrong. And if Vince McMahon can send him out the way he should, then there you go. It's perfect. And the other thing is this, before we go, I realize we're black and white, is Ric Flair is the one character who can match up with Vince McMahon word for word, sentence for sentence, ego for ego. Vince has got an equal. Now they just have to book it that way.
I said it better myself.
We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about Raw because the King's back, and we barely touched on him. So we'll be back after this.
None. Well, it was a pretty good return, even for Raw, even for the WWF in this current state this past Monday with the return of Ric Flair. But we also saw, well, maybe in the or in the background for that matter, a thinner yet wiser version of Jerry Lawler show up to replace Paul Heyman on commentary, which you gotta feel for Lawler. He quit the WWF because his then wife or the girlfriend, whatever you want to believe, the cat, was told by management, we don't want you anymore. So Lawler went out on a limb and said, you fire her, you take me with you. So Lawler got fired, and then she left him. I feel so bad for Jerry Lawler, but he got his job back. So
indirectly, you're saying that the cat left him because he was no longer employed. Thus, he had no money coming in.
Yeah, she
Exactly.
So what does that say about the cat then? Would you like to draw on that?
Well, I'd like to say the fact that the cat treated Jerry Lawler, well, that was her sugar daddy, until the sugar stopped coming in. So that was just her daddy.
I was just going to say
and she's
that.
going to go
How
find
does
some more
those now?
sugar.
Jerry Lawler has a job, and, well, the cat is...
Well, she may be
I'm not
knocking
even
on
going to go any further.
She may be knocking on the door of Lawler in the next upcoming week.
She may be
Maybe
knocking
Brian
on our
Christopher
door in the
will
next
too.
couple weeks.
Brian Christopher. Oh,
Yeah,
Lord.
before this becomes the Maury Povich show, I
Yeah.
think we should move on.
Well, let's not jump over Lawler here. I think we had talked about Paul Heyman's presence on Raw over the last few months when he was there. And I liked Paul Heyman. I thought Paul Heyman added an element to the show that Jerry Lawler can't provide. And that is analysis as to, you know, like when Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle were wrestling at WrestleMania, he was actually able to break down what it meant for Chris Benoit to be able to go move for move for Kurt Angle. And that's something Jerry Lawler wouldn't provide. But I think for what Raw needs to be and for what the WWF needs to be, and that's more entertainment on Monday nights, they need to be less about the great matches and more about the good angles. Perfect example would be the whole Vince McMahon, William Regal segment, which was ridiculous. But Jerry Lawler sold that whole segment.
Right.
And it's something Paul Heyman couldn't do. Not anything against him, but it's just how good Lawler is at doing that.
Well, I know what you mean, because Paul Heyman can sell a Chris Benoit, Kurt Angle match, and he can make you appreciate the German suplex, and he can make you appreciate the crippler crossface,
Right.
and he can make you appreciate the fact that Chris Benoit trained in Japan and wrestled in Japan
Right.
and did all those kind of things. But Jerry Lawler comes out, and he's just going to be one of those guys that he's going to, be juvenile when the women come out, and be juvenile when Regal kisses McMahon's ass. So, and I can understand where you're coming from, though, that Raw's kind of lost that without him.
Yeah, and we've been talking about how the wrestling needs to be more focused upon it. I'm not saying from my last comment that it shouldn't be. It should be. But I think the thing that Raw was a standard bearer for was stuff like they did this past Monday with Vince and Regal. Because it's one of those segments where you either loved what they did or you hated it. And that's what Raw was known for, those segments like that they push the envelope. But that's what you need Lawler for. That's what Lawler's great at. And SmackDown's been more of a show where they've concentrated more on the wrestling, and I think it should stay that way. But I think having Lawler back Monday night sort of gives you that irreverence that Raw had that I think was definitely missing. And it's nice to have him back.
I think to some degree, though, one of my biggest complaints about Lawler is, as you put it, one of his bigger strengths. Doing what he did during the Regal McMahon thing. I was kind of indifferent toward the angle. As far as Lawler that goes, that wears thin after a while the way he acts. But overall, I think the majority of the fans will like it.
People eat it up.
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
exactly
thing.
the point. And so I'm in the minority in that. And that's all I have to say.
Maybe another change, notwithstanding the Flair return and the Lawler return on Monday. We saw perhaps the title with the most lineage and history of it be only referred to from this point on as the world title. And I think, Brian, you alluded to a muscle title last week that used to come with those little figures. So
Yes.
apparently the muscle belt has more prestige than the world title does this week, which why even keep the belt around? I don't understand. I realize the WWF realizes the Rock needs a belt to be popular. The Rock sucks, okay? He doesn't need a belt. He doesn't even need to be on TV. I hope his movie career takes a turn for the best. I hope he's in the 7th Harry Potter movie, for God's sake. Just stay away from a ring, you 3-move wonder. And with that...
Well, that was our rant segment.
That's right.
I'm sorry, I go off, I'm going to babble a little
Well, with
bit.
Ric Flair back, that world championship may not be the world championship for long. We don't know.
Right, but I do agree with Tom. I think that the belt should have, after Survivor Series, he should have took the belt off the Rock. He has red, white, and blue T-shirts now. He doesn't need a world title
But it's
belt.
a
Exploiter.
unification match. Why not? Well, then again, if they're going to end Austin Rock at Survivor Series.
The thing was, and this is another point that, the Dudleys won the unification match against the Hardys, and then we're going back, but, and then the WWF titles were the ones that were kept.
Right.
Why?
But at the same token, Edge
Well,
had
they
both.
survived.
Who did?
The WWF.
Oh, so that was the...
Yeah, that's what they said during.
Oh.
They said that during Survivor Series. That whatever company survived,
Those are the titles that have survived.
those are going to be the belts that.
But
that
at
stayed
the same
around.
token, Edge had both belts.
Okay, Jim, crap all over what I was trying to say.
No, I think in the end result will be once WCW does get their own show, going back to your idea, I think you'll see those belts separate
Oh,
again.
absolutely.
The World Championship will be around for a while, and I think keeping it on the Rock gives it some sort of credibility. I don't know how much now without another promotion, but
He doesn't need a friggin' belt.
Oh, he
Tom's
doesn't.
right about it. He
no,
does not need a
Jericho
belt.
should have had. Well, yeah, you're right. Again, Tom, you were right. But no, I agree.
Takes a
Jericho
bitter
should have
man
kept
to
the
say
belt.
that.
Jericho should have kept the belt, and well, that didn't happen. So
Oh, there's one more point I'd like to bring up, if just maybe ending this segment out
On
a
The
little
Rock?
bit here. Well, no, not about The Rock, about somebody more worthless than The Rock, but could be actually a big star in the WWF. You saw the Immunity Battle Royal, you saw Test win, obviously. I'm not referring to
come
Test.
on.
If
Okay.
Taz would have won, and well, Taz has been retained by the WWF. He hasn't been thrown out on his ass like he should have been. He's been retained by the WWF for broadcasting purposes. So if Taz would have won the Immunity Battle Royal, he would have won, he would have stayed with the WWF, and he would have had the headset on. He would have been there week after week on Thursday, missing his
Sucking
cues,
it up as usual.
falling asleep, much like Lloyd McClendon a la Pittsburgh, but smoking a cigarette, keeping the carrot in the mouth to give the illusion that he's healthy.
Jim Leland, right?
Oh, what I say, McClendon? Another worthless. Never mind. I'm probably going to get lynched now. This is Pittsburgh. So.
He's no longer allowed at the Pirates Clubhouse, ladies.
But anyway, just a wonderful move on the WWF's part. Keep Taz for broadcasting. Don't keep him for wrestling.
We're going to get to that in the rant topics. Don't worry about that.
Oh my God, Brian, I'm sorry. I forgot about you were going to talk about Taz and your rant. I'm sorry.
I won't be here next segment. Well, once again, we're back to black and white. So we're going to come back. We're going to do the rants. Well, I'm not, because Tom just ruined mine. But, I'll talk about something. We'll be back.
It wasn't Vince McMahon's fault that Paul Heyman misbooked the entire Shane Douglas-Taz feud. It wasn't Vince McMahon's fault that Paul Heyman didn't book Mike Awesome as a monster heel. It wasn't Vince McMahon's fault. Okay?
Yeah, everything's okay.
It wasn't Vince McMahon's fault that he gave the Dudleys 8 title reigns that meant nothing and had him lose one of those title reigns to the Eliminators when Perry Saturn's leg was in a full cast. It also wasn't Vince McMahon's fault that he gave the belt to Tommy Dreamer for 40 minutes, who at this point was the last, possibly the only star he had at this point, jobbed his title out after a 40-minute reign to an unproven Just Incredible. So Paul Heyman and all you ECW loyalists that are still out there, before you blame Vince McMahon for putting ECW out of business, before you blame everybody in the world, blame Paul Heyman because he had much to do with it as anybody else.
I'd also like to say before you start on your rant, Brian, it wasn't Vince McMahon's fault that Shane Douglas shook Gary Wolf's halo and incited a riot in the ECW arena. I'd just like to throw that in.
Oh well. I'll even Tom stomped all over my rant last segment.
Yeah.
Actually, the point I wanted to make about Taz had nothing to do with the commentary. It has to do with this. Everybody, I'm talking about us 4 on the panel, everybody on the internet, everybody at home, shut up about Taz forever. Because I think it's now a fact that Taz is never going to go anywhere other than the commentary booth. Last week it was another time where they had a chance to restart the whole Taz push, and we talked about it on the show last week when he had the big 40-second squash to Steve Austin. And this past week on Raw when William Regal elbowed him in the face and then dragged him out to the ring kicking and screaming and pinned him in 2 minutes. Taz isn't getting pushed. Stop dreaming, stop hoping, stop wondering, stop speculating. It is not going to happen. It's obvious that the WWF has no plans for him other than the commentary table. And I think the sooner we all begin to live with this, the sooner we all learn to love it, the sooner that we all deal with it. Everybody's going to be happier. It's just not going to happen. There is no place for Taz in the main event of the WWF. There's no place in the upper mid-card. There's no place in the lower mid-card. There's no place opening up the shows. There's no place on Heat. There's no place on Jack. There's no place on, the vault matches on Excess. He isn't getting pushed. It's not going to happen. Stop dreaming.
I think you actually have to wrestle to be on vault matches because that's
You
like
probably
the past.
do.
Okay.
Well, they can show him in Kurt whatever.
Notwithstanding Ric Flair's debut, or I should say return to Raw this past week when he nearly stripped down to almost everything, or I should say nothing, there was another part of Raw that I actually enjoyed, and that was Kurt Angle from the beginning to the end of the show. He showed up at Raw. I'm so distracted, offset. He showed up at Raw. Sorry. I'm going to say it for the 3rd time. He showed up at Raw as the hero from Survivor Series. I saved your job. I saved your job. Kurt Angle played his part tremendously. He went through the night, and as Vince McMahon, who started the night as the face, gradually turned into the heel, which I thought was a tremendous booking. I thought Kurt Angle did a tremendous job with this, because it's just one of those things where, for the last few weeks, Kurt Angle's been good guy, he's been bad guy, he's been good guy, and now he's bad guy again. Hopefully, Kurt Angle and the WWF can get past this little rough spot in his career, and he can continue being the entertaining Olympic hero that he has been since his debut in '99. And that's it, because I'm too distracted. Somebody's reading.
Well, notwithstanding the distractions or Mr. Inconsolable, my idea for a movie with Pat Morita from Karate Kid, I'd like to talk a little bit about Ric Flair and the casual wrestling fan, if you will. And I'm sure it'll be all over the boards that Ric Flair's pushing, mid-50s, maybe even 60. I'm not sure how old he is, probably in his mid-50s. And you have these fans out there that, the fans I'm talking about, have about 3 Rock shirts, thinks wrestling's real, live and die by what The Rock says, talk about Strudel with the water cooler at their job the next day, assuming they have one. But the fact of the matter is that Ric Flair is wrestling. He has been wrestling for a quarter century. He has been the standard bearer for which wrestling... Ric Flair is 53, thank you. I didn't get that patched in, by the way. But Ric Flair has been the standard bearer. As far as world title reigns go, as far as a champion with a world title, he has wrestled some of the best and most consistent matches, not unlike Hulk Hogan, who, like I said, 8-minute spot fest where he got blown up and left the ring. But the fact is, I can equate Ric Flair with the Beatles. The rock group, obviously, from Liverpool. You know where that's at. It's in England.
I think people know the Beatles are a rock group.
These are the same wrestling fans I'm referring to that have 3 rock shirts, Jim. They may not know. The little Beatles, you stomp with your foot. No. The Beatles. I didn't respect them for the longest. Well, I didn't like them for the longest time, but I did respect them. The same way with Ric Flair. You cannot call yourself a wrestling fan if you do not respect Ric Flair. You're the casual wrestling fan. You hang on every word The Rock says, and you're no good for this business. So stop watching wrestling. Turn on NASCAR. Turn on Robot Wars. Get out of our business. Well, I shouldn't say our business.
I'm glad you clarified which Beatles. I was sitting here thinking.
Bro, do you honestly think
What
in
Beatles?
in a society where Jay Leno has walk talkers on there, jaywalkers that don't know what DC stands for in Washington D.C., do you honestly think that there's two people out there that may know what the Beatles are or where they're from?
If there's not, there's a sad, sad world. But you're
It
probably
is.
right.
It is a sad, sad world,
Oh,
but it's
wow.
gotten better because Ric Flair is back.
Well, I guess you can read my column called Sharpshooter. It's in the Daily News. You can pick it up on newsstands all over the United States of America in Pennsylvania. Or read it on the internet at www.dailynewsmckeesport.com. I'm on the columnist section. Yay.
If you want to read my column, you can pick it up on the newsstands tomorrow, or you can read it on the web. It's www.triblive.com/sports. I'm going to be talking about Hulk Hogan's Spot Fest, which I think was against Sergeant Slaughter at WrestleMania 7.
That was the debut of the moonsault.
No, it was actually the second rope axe handle.
Right, that high spot. Question again for this week's trivia contest is name 4 different men Ric Flair defeated to win a world title. Name any 4. And if you want to send us hate mail, you know the address. It's IHatePWR@cs.com. That's right, it's IHatePWR@cs.com.
If it wasn't for Hulk Hogan and Zeus, we may have never seen a neck break right in the middle of the ring. But anyway,
How did that go again?
you know how it works.
Mention that website, Tom. I didn't.
ProWrestlingReview.com. Check out the year-end awards. Please vote for me. And give some ideas. Give some suggestions for
That wasn't too
our
subtle.
Christmas show. So my rant was subtle. I crapped on your rant. Everybody crapped on mine. But anyway, give some ideas. Our Christmas show's coming up here shortly in the next couple of weeks. We had Light Up Night last week on the show. Give some ideas for
Is
the
that
show.
why I got thrown off?
Yeah. You didn't have a flashlight. So some ideas, ProWrestlingReview.com, ProWrestlingReview at Lycos, whatever, I don't even know what the website or the email is. Send us some ideas and vote. Rock the vote, if you will.
Well, why don't you take us out there,
All right.
Queen?
Well, notwithstanding the worst rant in the history of this show by me, this is me, and you're you, and that's Brian, and that's Jim. This is Pro Wrestling Review, and we're going to go watch a Hulk Hogan Spot Fest where fire was thrown between his legs. We'll see you next week.